الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له واشهد ان لا اله الا الله واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله. That means I begin by praising Allah, the one God. We praise Him, we seek His help, and we ask for His forgiveness. And we take refuge with the Creator from the evil of ourselves and from the evil consequence of our evil actions. Whoever God guides, no one can misguide, but whosoever God leaves to go astray, no one can guide. And I testify that God alone, Allah alone is worthy of worship, and that Muhammad is His servant and His messenger. I'd like to start by sharing with you a personal experience, a recent personal experience. 3 weeks ago, there was a fire in my house. At the time, my son, one of my sons, two of my sons, were in the house, and one of my daughters. My wife had gone out to pick another one of my children up from school. Between the death, I really hate squeaking mic. You can turn the electrics off and I can just shout like that. If anyone can't hear me, just say. That was an attempt to be serious there, right? So, okay, so back to the main thing. Between the death of 3 of my children and the burning down of the entire house and its contents was a key, a misplaced key. You see, I have 8 kids in my house. I have 12 kids, but 8 live with me. And my 3 elder girls, they have a room, they share a room. And they lock the door of the room every day because otherwise the little ones will bust into their room and start messing around with all their stuff. So they make sure every day they lock the door, and sometimes they leave the key in the door. Sometimes, they hang the door on the banister, and for some reason, this time, the key was misplaced. And my son, 13-year-old son, comes up. He was in the house and he saw the smoke coming out of the door. And he was thinking, is that a fire? That can't be a fire. And then the black smoke came out, and then he knew that was a fire. And he was rushing around looking for the key. And fortunately, he couldn't find the key. But what he described is his state of panic. How, when he realized there was a fire, he just stopped thinking and he just started panicking and he didn't know what to do. And he ran this way and then ran that way, and then he started, then he decided to go outside and he started screaming, fire, fire. And he opened the front door, screaming, fire, fire. And picked up the phone, managed to, there's a fire in the house, listen, mention the address, like, calm down, one person said. Anyway, eventually, he gets outside and then remembers that his brother and sister, Muhammad and Aisha, they're inside, still inside. They're just sleeping because they're very young. Aisha's 2, Muhammad's like 7 months. And thanks to God, the neighbor came, they helped, and they got the kids out, and the fire brigade came, put the fire out. But the fire people said that if my son had opened the door, because the door was closed, the fire was starved of oxygen. And if he had opened the door, the oxygen would have rushed in, caused an explosion, almost definitely would have killed him instantly. And within 3 minutes, the 2 babies would have suffocated from the smoke. And that had a profound impact on me. But perhaps maybe not in a way that it might have on some other people. There's 2 things, 2 profound things that I learned from that incident. And they're very much connected, actually. The first thing is that when I thought about the possibilities of what actually could have happened, that my entire house, all my property, everything that I owned literally could have been burnt up in a few minutes. And I thought about all my stuff, and I realized honestly that I would have not missed anything. Nothing. Except my books. My books. Honestly, my books are the one thing that I just don't know, some of them, how I could ever replace them. The other thought was concerning my children. How much love, how much time, how much money, how many emotions, how many tears you shed for your children, how much you do for them to bring them up. And I think some people may think, oh, something like that, you know, I need to spend more quality time with my kids. But that's not what I thought at all. Because I realized that my children literally could have been taken away from me in an instant. In an instant. 1 minute they're with you, the next minute they're not. 1 minute you open the door, your daughter comes smiling, Abba, Abba, which means, you know, Dad, Dad in Arabic. So happy to see you, smiling. I could call Aisha, she's my sunshine. When I see her, I just feel really happy inside. Do you know that she could have been just gone in an instant? And then I realized something really quite profound, that what was it all for? All that time, all that energy, all that love, all that effort, everything I put into my children, what was it for? If they had been taken away, what was it for? And tonight's talk is also about a fire. It's about a fire. A fire that I believe completely and truly is real. It is as real as that fire in my house. But it is much more intense, and the suffering of that fire is infinitely more long-lasting. And the consequences of being involved in it are catastrophic, and they are final. That's what it's about. And tonight's talk is also about what is it that we invest our time in? What is it that we put all our energy in this life? What is it for? What is the purpose of life? Why are we here? What's the reason for it all? Because if it's all taken away, and everything that you thought was so important is gone, really truly, what is left? And this is the thing, you see, a lot of us, we invest so much energy, so much time, so much effort into the things that we think this is what my life is about. This is why I'm here. This is what it's for. You know, what could it be? Maybe another human being that you love and that you care deeply about. And you spend a lot of time. You think, really, this person is the purpose of my life. This person is the reason why I'm here. It's me and that person. It's romantic, it's beautiful, it's lovely, but you know, if that person's taken away from me, like nearly happened to me, then what happens to your life? I mean, your life goes on. It can't be the purpose of your life, because if they died, then you would die. If that was it, it would be it for you as well. Often we think the purpose of our life is the things we invest our time and our energy in. And every society has a narrative. Every civilization, every ideology has a narrative. it has, or it constructs an attempt to explain the answer to these fundamental questions. And I would like to argue tonight that these questions are so fundamental, they are so important for us as human beings, that in some cases they're even more important than the very physical necessities like food, drink, shelter, clothing, companionship. And I would like to reflect about the narrative of our society, the one in which we live. Or, I would actually, to be more fair, I would like to reflect on a very widespread dimension of Western society, because it would be unfair to say that the whole of Western society could be summed up like this. But I would think it's definitely fair to say that at the present time, the dominant narrative and ideology in the Western world, and one that is having huge influence throughout the whole of the world, say in French actually, influence, let's say, is this idea of the consumer society, what I call the Coca-Cola culture. The idea that the purpose of life is to have fun, to enjoy yourself, to gratify your sensual appetites and desires. That by fulfilling these appetites, by following your desires, by submitting yourself to your appetites, that is the way that you are going to be successful and happy and fulfilled. And it's this ideology that we are exposed to 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The one that tells us, eat this, buy this, drink this, drive this, have this holiday, do this thing, do that thing, and you'll be fulfilled, you'll be happy. Of course, it doesn't say it quite like that. But really, this is the subliminal message that we find is being put across. Because we're not only being sold products. When we drink Coca-Cola, we're not simply drinking a sugar-filled carbonated soft drink. We're buying into a lifestyle, a philosophy. Could I dare even say a religion? A way of living. So look at the advertisements. Coca-Cola. What does it really do for you? But what does the advert make you think that it does for you? If you watch a Coca-Cola advert, you'll see them. Right? The sun is shining. Yeah? They're dancing. Huh? And what do you have? You have this perfectly formed brown, and I don't mean, Pakistani Asian brown, Caucasian brown, yeah? Smiling white teeth, nubile men, women, dancing and Coke is it. Coke is life. Coke it's the real thing. And you look at that and you say, yeah, that's where I want to be. Right? That's where I want to be. And so what do? You go and buy yourself a bottle of Coke, because they have succeeded in connecting in your brain that if you buy this drink, somehow you might become part of that beautiful looking lifestyle. Right? That's the trick of advertising. It's not about a product, it's about you buying into a fantasy. One of my all-time favourite adverts of all time for this particular talk that I give anyway is for Bacardi. Many years back, it shows my age. If anyone remembers this advert, I doubt it very much. Yeah. In fact, I don't think some of you might not. You just might have been born, actually, right? But they had this poster, big posters. And the posters had various themes. It was more or less like this. You can imagine, right? A white tropical beach. You know those white beaches with the white sand? Yeah? The blue sky, the crystal clear blue sea, palm trees hanging down, bikini-clad girls walking down the beach. Yeah? You know, just the sort of thing that a lot of people might think is an idea of paradise. Right? And what was the caption? The caption said, "A rainy Sunday night in Peckham, if you're drinking Bacardi." A rainy Sunday night in Peckham, if you're drinking Bacardi. Let's think about that clever piece of marketing, brainwashing, actually, indoctrination, right? So what is it saying? Number one, it's Sunday night. I mean, Sunday night, of course, is the absolute worst night of the whole week. Because Sunday night means the next day is Monday, and Monday means I have to go back to that goddamn boring job, yeah, that 9 to 5 zombie-like existence, back to the land of the living dead, right? The weekend is finished, the weekend is ended, now I have to go back to work, it's Sunday night, I'm depressed already just saying Sunday night, okay? And then on top of that, it's raining. Right? So it's Sunday night and it's raining. I mean, the sun came out today in Manchester. That's a rare event, actually. I think we should make a prostration of thankfulness for the... Yeah, and I must admit, walking in the sunshine, I was smiling. Just the sun was there and I was smiling. So, you know what it's like? It's raining, and for us, most of us, that's miserable. In Pakistan, it's different, by the way. When it rains in Pakistan, they go out and have picnics. You know, the dance as well, that's true. They have picnics. But for us, right, rainy, it's Sunday night, very depressing. It's a rainy night, it's even more depressing. And worst of all, you're in Peckham. Now, 20 years ago, Peckham probably was one of the most unpleasant places to live. Okay, certainly in London, perhaps on the planet, maybe not, but it was a nasty place. But what is the advert saying? But think about it, beyond what we're laughing about. What this advertisement is telling you is that somehow by consuming alcohol, a particular alcoholic drink, your misery will be transformed into a paradise-like state. And it's nothing short of that. That's what that advert is saying. That's what Coca-Cola is telling you. And I'm sure, I don't really watch TV, but I'm sure you could probably list me huge numbers of adverts on the TV right now that in one way or another, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, are selling you the same vision. Buy this washing machine, use this particular cleaning fluid, I don't know, whatever it may be, and your life will be transformed. But all of this, what does it do to us? It's teaching us an ideology. That by buying things, by consuming things, by purchasing products, this is how we will achieve happiness and success and fulfillment in life. In reality, most of what we do at university is we are being socialized. We are being socialized to become part of the consumer society. That's what we're doing. We're learning to become cogs in the machine. Or as Pink Floyd so brilliantly sung, all in all, you're just another brick in the wall. Really, very profound song, part of a very profound film. I don't know if anyone's seen it, The Wall. I can't believe I'm encouraging people, but there you go. This is really something's worthwhile. And what's the result of this? What is the consequence of this? Do we find really, despite the Western world's unprecedented material prosperity, and there's probably no denying it, that in material terms, Western society has reached unprecedented levels of pure, sheer material wealth. And it's almost undeniable. But what is the consequence of that? Here's the interesting thing. Despite our vast material prosperity, what is absolutely obvious is there has not been a correspondingly vast increase in human happiness. In fact, across the board we find that the very people, the very society that should be living this paradise dream are suffering from almost innumerable mental and social problems. The most prescribed drug in the history of prescribed drugs is what? Prozac. Antidepressants. Children, some as young as 7 or 9 are being prescribed antidepressants. This is very serious. And here's another question that I often put to people. Why? Why do people need to get drunk? Why? Did you ever think about this extraordinary? Look at the terminology we use. I was wasted, I was out of it, I was stoned, I was smashed. People describing states of what? Self-annihilation. Self-annihilation. Someone comes home, I'm sure the Muslims here are flabbergasted at this, you know. You live in your student flat, someone comes home 4 o'clock in the morning. It probably doesn't actually happen this much, there's too serious universities these days. It's not that. In the morning, right, absolutely drunk, pukes up and falls asleep in a pool of their own sick and wakes up the next morning and says, oh, I had a great time last night. And it's like, really? What did you do? I don't remember. And that's why I had a really good time, because the least I remember, the more of a good time I had. I remember several years back, I don't remember how many years back this was now, the government, despite all the dramatic things that were taking place in the world, the government was really worried about a continuing trend amongst young women in this country. And that was binge drinking. Women were beginning to binge drink, which is something new, it was a new phenomenon. And women cannot, in general, hold, or their bodies do not take alcohol generally as well as men. And what they were worried was that what we have is a national health crisis in the waiting. In 20 years' time, if this kept going, the government realized that there were going to be large numbers of women who were going to have serious health problems, including serious liver complaints from this disease. So the government wanted a campaign to stop it now. To stop a crisis happening in 20 years' time. That's thinking ahead. It's quite good. Right? And I remember reading this article in one of the newspapers. And the article was interviewing 2 of these ladettes. This is the term they gave these young girls, ladettes, right? And these 2 ladettes, right, had very upwardly mobile, lots of disposable income. Basically, they lived at home, they had good jobs, they were earning good money, they had lots of money, they didn't have to pay rent, they didn't have to pay for the bills, the money they earned was theirs. So they were asking them, why do you do this? They said, our life is so boring. Our life is so boring and so empty. The only relief we get from our boring, empty lives is when we go out on the weekend and indulge ourselves in pure hedonism. Pure hedonism. Until we forget how boring our lives are. That's scary. People who are so bored. They have to destroy themselves, because that's really what's happening. And what makes me think here is, listen, people are ready, sometimes even, if you look at some drug addicts, there are people who are actually ready to go to the degree where they will deprive themselves even of food, even of shelter, what were thought to be the basic components of what is a basic existence in order to satisfy a drug habit. But I would say it's not the drug habit. That's not the issue. I believe there's something deeper, there's something more profound. What is really going on? And I believe this is something that can be referred to as existential angst or ontological anxiety, which are very nice posh words, right? I love them though. Existential angst and ontological anxiety. I love it. But actually what it really means is people don't know what life is for. They don't know what life is about. Because I actually think no one really buys into this lie that wealth equals happiness. We repeat it, we live it, we join in with it, we propagate it, but do we really believe it? Deep down inside, do people really think that wealth equals happiness? That the way to lead a fulfilled life is just by giving yourself in to every passion and every desire and every whim and every fancy? That really this is what is going to make you a fulfilled, truly happy human being? Actually, the evidence points dramatically in the opposite direction. In fact, the evidence in terms of research in psychology actually, incredibly enough, tells us almost exactly the opposite. That the people who consistently report the highest levels of happiness, deep happiness, a permanent happiness, are actually people who they are constantly experiencing something which is called optimal experience. Optimal experience is a state of being. When a human being is struggling to the very limits of their capacity in order to be able to do something significant that gives them an increased feeling of self-worth and an increased feeling that they have made the world a better place. As I once said to a girl who was thinking about becoming Muslim, and she said, you know what, it all makes sense to me, but you know, how am I going to give up my piss-ups on Friday night, Saturday night? Right? How am I going to give that up? You know, I'm just having too much fun. Let me ask you a question, right? When you come home on your Saturday night after your partying all night, right? And you wake up the next morning, do you wake up thinking, I have improved myself today as a human being? Because of what I did last night, I am a better human being. And do you wake up thinking, I have made the world a better place to live? Do you feel those two things? Because believe me, if you haven't, if what you do does not make you feel those two things, you are getting no true, profound sense of happiness from what you do. You are not. Because that is what gives people a true and profound and lasting sense of happiness and well-being. And this actually means, and when we only get this, when we are actually pushing ourselves, when we are struggling, that means that we are trying to overcome our desires. We are trying to be in control of our passions and our whims, controlling them rather than them controlling us. And this, by the way, used to be something that was understood. This idea of self-control used to be understood as something worthy, as something to aim for. That a human being was judged on that ability by themselves and by others of being in control of themselves, of being able to control themselves, of not giving in to every whim and every passion and every desire. This is how the worth of a human being was judged. There's a very profound saying that a great writer, a great scholar, a person who truly knew God, they call it in Arabic mu'arrifun, someone who truly knew God. He knew God, he understood God as much as a human being can. And he said that the heart is a vessel that has to be filled. And there is a void in the heart. The heart has a void. And nothing can fill this void. Nothing can fill this empty space in the heart except by knowing one's Lord, by remembering one's Lord, by loving one's Lord, and by being close to one's Lord. Because that is the nature of the heart. And we human beings, the heart is a vessel that has to be filled. The heart has to be filled. Something has to be in the heart. If we imagine the heart is a vessel, there has to be something in this heart. It can't be empty. It does not tolerate a vacuum. So either we fill the heart with that which it was created for, which according to what Islam teaches is to know God. The heart has been created to know God, to love God, to remember God, to be close to God. That's what. But if that is not in the heart, we have to fill it with something else. We have to try and substitute it. We will try to fill it with something that will create those feelings, those intense feelings. Think about this, just on a spiritual dimension. Think about this. Think about the people throughout the ages and throughout history who have sacrificed everything to dedicate themselves to try to get closer to God. People who have sacrificed family, possessions, and still do until this day. Their lives, perhaps, dedicate great amounts of their time to meditating, to praying, to deep contemplation. All in an attempt to connect with their Creator, to get close to God. This is something that is a very deep and profound experience within human beings. And certainly for those people who experience it, it's something very real. Something so real. Something so profound that it takes over them completely. And it fills them and satisfies them. And this is the Islamic paradigm. Islam, the religion of Islam, the Quran, is teaching us that, yes, we live in this world. We need to eat, we need to drink. And Islam is not a monastic religion. It is not teaching us that you go, to be religious, you need to go and live in the mountains and, renounce everything. Right? Live in a cave, live up on a tree, go and live in a monastery like where I went to school, renounce all. No, Islam is not saying that. Actually, Islam is saying, live in the world, live with the people of this world, but within this world, try to live a righteous, pious life connected with your Creator. So it is a God-centered life, but it's not saying you need to leave everything in the world in order to live like that. But that is still the paradigm. That is still the basis. See, what the Quran teaches is the purpose of life is not sensual and material and physical gratification. The purpose of life is to know God. That's what the Quran teaches. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. That we have not created the human beings and the jinn, God says, except to worship me. And worship here means to know God. It's not worship in the very limited sense that we often understand. In the West, we've come, in a secular society, we've come to understand worship as being in a very limited way. Even if I say worship, most people think, maybe it means church on once a week, or I don't know, baptism or marriage, or maybe some limited rituals. But the word in Arabic, ibadah, is very deep and very profound. Actually, its root, the root of ibadah, is actually from the Arabic word abd, which means slave. So the root of it is a state of complete surrender to God. So that what one is seeking to achieve, although, of course, human beings are weak. Human beings have desires. And God knows that. God is not, we don't believe that God is expecting us to be perfect. No. That's not what Islam teaches at all. Islam is not teaching that we have to be perfect to know God. And so there is this idea that maybe, for example, we find in Christianity, some Christians will say, because God is so perfect, He can't look upon the sins of men. No, this is not at all the concept in Islam. In fact, sin itself can be a way through which and by which we can come to know God, if we repent from it. Because it's through the action of committing a sin, recognizing that you've done something that is displeasing to God, asking and pleading and begging with God to forgive you, and trying to rectify and change yourself, then one experiences God's forgiveness. Even to the extent that the Prophet Muhammad said that if you didn't commit sins and repent for your sins, then God would remove you and He would bring another people who would commit sins, and they would ask God for forgiveness for their sins, and God would forgive them. Because that's a profound human experience. That we are limited, we are needy, we are dependent. And through that process we come to understand that God is forgiving. So Islam is not saying you have to be perfect. No. But you have to try. You have to try, you have to be humble. That's the basis of what Islam is saying. That a Muslim, that all human beings, Islam is saying, should recognize that the creator of the heavens and the earth, the one who controls every atom, every unit of existence, who has power over all things, that God is the one to whom we should look for guidance, and that God knows best. God knows what is best for us. There are many questions that people have about us. So what a Muslim is seeking, what is trying to be sought here, is a state of being where everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you even think and feel is done in a way that is pleasing to God. The essence here really, and this may sound strange, maybe you haven't heard this from Muslims before, but actually the essence is love. It really is truly love. It's true, deep, profound love for God. And it's very interesting. You find in the Quran, when God talks about things that God doesn't want the human beings to do, you often find most of the time that God says, Inna Allah la yuhibbul, which means verily God does not love the dhalimun, the transgressors, for example. So even when God is telling us that there are things that human beings do that are wrong in the sight of God, that are bad in the sight of God, God still points to love. He still points to this aspect of love. God doesn't say He hates this and He hates that. He says He doesn't love those people who do this and that. Meaning the essence is still going back to this connection that should be a connection of love. And that comes from knowing God, being grateful to God. And this is our paradigm. This is our worldview. And so in this is a struggle. There is a great struggle. A struggle against my desires. A struggle against my passions. A struggle against my wants. But this struggle, when one embarks upon it, when one launches oneself in, when one embraces this struggle, there is a profound sense of, number one, self-worth. That you are most definitely doing something that benefits you. Not based, by the way, upon our limited knowledge of the human condition, but rather based upon, as the Muslim's perception, God's perfect knowledge of the human condition. This is very profound. And secondly, without doubt, it is a feeling of contributing something hugely significant to the well-being of humanity. And by the way, that is what every true Muslim desires, is the well-being for all humanity. Indeed, the Prophet Muhammad said that none of you truly believes until he loves for others what he loves for himself. So loving goodness for other human beings is an intrinsic part of what being a Muslim means. But every Muslim who embarks upon this journey feels a profound and deep sense of this connection with God. And it is the most significant, the most beautiful, the most wonderful thing that a human being can ever experience. And it is only out of Muslims' love for humanity that we wish everybody could taste and experience something of that profound connection with their Lord and God. And therefore, from our perspective, from our paradigm, that is the purpose of life. That is the reason for our existence. That is why we are here. My dear brothers and sisters in humanity, may God bless all of you, may God bless all of us, may God guide us all close to the truth. I really thank you so much for taking your precious time to listen to a few words, humble words from myself. May God bless you and guide you. Thank you.